Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'm joined today by Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hey Adam, nice to
Um,
see you.
Nice to see you too. We're going to talk today about lens choices for micro four thirds cameras, and we'll jump straight into it. Alex, what's the best fisheye lens for micro four thirds?
All right. Well, I think one of the things that a lot of us like about Micro Four Thirds, and I have a Micro Four. I've had a Micro Four Thirds camera since the first housings came available for the OMD EM5, and I've had a Micro Four Thirds since that. I've shot both Panasonics and the Olympuses quite a lot, and I currently have an OM10 Mark III. And what I like about the system is that you have really good quality lenses, both from Olympus and Panasonic, available to you, which work on both cameras, which it makes the system really exciting. I think perhaps I'm going to derail your question, Adam, and I think perhaps before we get into that, we should, given the timing, talk about the problems that Olympus are having at the moment, and the fact that their company the camera business is in a takeover situation. But I think it's important to remind people that that doesn't stop their cameras from working.
Yeah.
And I think the Micro Four Thirds system that Olympus is part of remains a really, really good system. Obviously, Panasonic is still using that system, and the Olympus cameras still work perfectly well. And I think they make great underwater cameras.
And I think there's no, despite the fact that no one knows what the future will hold for Olympus making new cameras. The fact is there are plenty of very good Olympus cameras out there available in the market, and equally there's lots of really, really good Olympus lenses out there. So we shouldn't feel that because Olympus's future is uncertain that their product is in any way not valuable. It is very valuable, and we should, where appropriate. In fact, sometimes actually now might be the time to buy them because as they get rarer, they'll increase in value. So maybe we should all invest in Olympus glass right now. But yeah, I mean, it's important to stress that the products are still very good and are very very useful, and particularly for underwater photographers.
Yeah, I really love that. I know I've had picture awarded in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year taken with an Olympus, and using a fisheye lens, which I guess gets us back on topic. The two lens options for fisheye for Olympus are both 8mm, and one is made by Olympus and one is made by Panasonic. And I think the important thing to say is both of them are really good lenses. The Panasonic is good and the Olympus is better, but the Olympus is more expensive. Having seen lots of shots with both, I personally actually own a Panasonic version, but having seen lots of shots with both, the Olympus clearly has a bit of an edge. So if you're a little bit, want the best, want to invest in the best, I recommend using the Olympus one. But if you buy a Panasonic one, you're really not giving a lot away, because both of them work really well underwater and both have really good optics.
For those that might be joining us with possibly less knowledge, the Micro Four Thirds system has a crop factor of 2. So when we talk about an 8mm fisheye, in a Micro Four Thirds, that's the equivalent of a 16mm on a full frame camera. So
yes, but again, I don't think. You're completely correct. But I think if you're an Olympus Micro Four Thirds shooter, you may never have shot a full frame camera.
Of course.
And what you need to know is that your 8mm gives you 180 degrees to corner to corner. And fisheyes are the most powerful lens you can use underwater. They take a little bit of getting used to using, but once you've learned to use them, they really open up space and they give your pictures an incredible impact. So learning to use a fisheye well is perhaps the most important skill anyone can develop as an underwater photographer. And those lenses are the doorway into it. Probably a slightly more useful lens as for general wide-angle shooting, though, is to use the Nauticam WWL1, which is the wide wet lens #1 that Nauticam produced really specifically for these systems. And that lens, when combined, I think the best lens to use it with is the Panasonic 14-42, but there's various other lenses you can use it behind as well. And what that lens is amazing for is it gives you 130 degrees wide angle, which is still ultra wide angle, but it gives you the ability to zoom at the same time. So it's a very, very flexible lens system. And because you can actually take the WWL on and off the housing underwater, it gives you ultimate flexibility when shooting. And that, for me, would be actually the first lens that I would buy if I was investing into a Micro Four Thirds system. Although I'm an absolute fisheye lover, I think the flexibility of that it's the go-to lens. It gives incredible flexibility when the WWL1 is on, but you can actually take the WWL off and even put a close-up lens on or something and have, tremendous flexibility during the dive. Now, that said, I'm a big believer in that the way to get really great underwater photos is not to try and shoot everything on a dive, and to go into the water with a clear plan about what you want to do, and not to be constantly changing all your system around all the time to be able to shoot everything, and instead to focus on getting a type of shot and take that type of shot as well as you can.
And to find subjects that suit it, I mean,
although that flexibility is a big selling point of that lens, it's, don't constantly be changing everything all the time. The other big selling point of that lens is the image quality is superb.
Perfect,
because that WWL1 is designed to work underwater, and that means that you can use even a relatively basic kit lens behind it, and it will actually outperform a super expensive lens because of the way underwater optics work. I think I said in my book, which I haven't been plugging enough. There you go. I said in my book that actually in underwater photography, it's not the camera you use that makes the biggest difference to the quality of your pictures. It's the accessories that you put on it. And there's and that's particularly true when it comes to lenses, and having the right lenses that give you the right angles of coverage to work with underwater and give you the right optics underwater make all the difference.
And the water contact optic thing, for those who aren't familiar, these are lenses that don't work on land, they only work underwater, and they effectively reduce the optical effects of water on the lens port, and certainly things like WWL1 will give you much better performance than using a dome port in conjunction with a wide angle lens. So as Alex says, it's a really, really good option. First thing, the other advantage that you've got is that the WWL will outlast several versions of the camera or lens combination. So it's something that travels with you. It's a pretty good investment. It's something that you'll probably keep in use on multiple cameras over the years. And you can actually make it work on a full frame Sony mirrorless camera as well. The 28 or compact cameras, or it's a very versatile piece of gear.
That's all that chat said. There is a really, really high quality wide angle, ultra wide angle lens of it's the Olympus Pro 7-14. Have I got that right?
7-14, it's 2.8,
which is a beautiful wide angle lens, which people do want to use underwater because it's kind of a perfect angle of view. It gives that really rectilinear look. The WWL1 does have a little bit of fisheye barrel distortion in it, which you don't tend to notice underwater. But if you want that really rectilinear look, and you want ability to shoot with a dome port, which can actually allow you to do split levels and things like that, so it can be useful. The 7-14 is a great lens to use for that. But it's a lens that if on a Micro Four Thirds system, I would only invest that amount of money in it if I wanted to use that lens on land. I'd have it as a land lens that I sometimes used underwater. I wouldn't buy it specifically as an underwater lens because the WWL1 just outperforms it so much.
And the WWL1, the sort of general recommendation is to use it with the Panasonic 1442, which again is actually is a pretty good lens to use behind a dome port as well, but its performance of the WWL1 is superior. So probably better.
I think it's important to point out that the WWL1 takes that 14mm and actually stretches it to a wider field of view. Which is, so it's, I would imagine that it, as a 14mm behind a dome port, it's probably going to give you a field of view around about 80 degrees.
85,
and behind the WWL1, it becomes 130 degrees. So it's a big transformation in terms of how it performs. Right, I guess we should go on to the macro lenses now. The two macro lenses, the first of these is that I'd really recommend is the Panasonic 45mm, which is a slightly wider macro lens, particularly good for low visibility diving, allows you to be a little bit closer to the subject, very sharp, really good. So good for muck diving, good for temperate water macro shooting. That's a really real workhorse lens. And then in clear waters, I'd switch over to the very, very nice Olympus 60mm lens, which I've got. I really like that lens. Really, really sharp lens. I'm not that thrilled by the bokeh of it, I have to say. It is a really good lens, but it's just as a picky underwater photographer, I don't think it has as nice a bokeh as some of the lenses out there. which is a really picky point. Bokeh is basically how the out of focus areas behind the subject look in the picture. And I think they don't look as nice with that Olympus 60mm as they do with some other lenses. But it's a very minor point. It's a really, really nice lens and great to use with close-up diopters for doing super macro. It's a lovely lens to use. And those will be my last two in the pack. There are some cheaper wide-angle options you can use, and there's a few cheaper mid-range lens users you might want to try underwater. But it would, for me, be 8mm Olympus. It would be a WWL1. If I owned a 7-14 for topside shooting, I'd probably buy a dome port so I could use it, particularly for split level shooting and occasionally underwater, maybe inside wrecks and things like that. And then it would be 45mm macro for the bigger macro subjects and for lower visibility diving, muck diving, and then a 60mm macro as my main workhorse macro and fish portrait lens.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a really good choice. That's a really good list of lenses, and that covers all the options.
I just remember one thing. One thing I really like to use my Micro Four Thirds system for is for wide-angle macro. You can do better wide-angle macro with a Micro Four Thirds system than you can with a big SLR.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking as a Micro Four Thirds shooter to get an advantage over people with bigger, more expensive cameras than you, actually the small footprint size of the camera and the fact that you can use the system with really small dome ports is really powerful. And I use a 3.5-inch dome port on my, or 3.2-inch dome port on my, with my Panasonic fisheye to make a really good wide-angle macro system for muck diving. And I love that system. But you want to get the handles off the housing. You want to make the housing really small, have the strobes right in tight. And this mini dome and the fisheye is a really great setup. And that's something I wanted to highlight as something I love using my Micro Four Thirds system for.
I've watched you using it at Lembe, and it certainly produced some great results. So yeah, it's a good thing to do. The small form factor of the camera makes a big difference. Yeah,
and I love my Micro Four Thirds. And actually, one of the reasons why I think that picture did really well for me in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, which is a silhouette shot of a whale shark. I'm taking on the Wetpixel Isla Mujeres strips.
Yeah.
And the small camera just made me so much more maneuverable in the water because I had no drag on it, and I could just get myself absolutely perfectly lined up on the subject. Yeah. And that shot is all about the perfection of the details. Yeah. You know, anyone can shoot a silhouette of a whale shark who sees lots of whale sharks in Isla Mujeres, but getting absolutely everything right was really about my positioning in the water. And that was so much easier dragging a tiny little camera in my hand around than it was with a great big SLR that would take two hands, and I wouldn't be able to swim as fast or maneuverably.
Yep. So. Great. Thanks very much, Alex. So you mentioned your book earlier. Where can people get your book from?
Well, the book is pretty widely available. I don't think they're probably not going to print anymore, so there are limited numbers of the physical copies available now, but it's available on Amazon and everywhere like that. I don't intend to ever do a second edition of it. For me, it's very much a standalone piece of work. I wrote it in a way that wouldn't age. And I actually think if you read it now, I don't think any of the advice in it is really aged in it. I think there's a couple of topics that I think it misses. I think I'd like something on blackwater photography in there. And I'd probably do something on long exposure macro shooting, which I think, with panning and things like that. There's obviously a lot on panning in the book, but I think using snoots and panning and some of that has become quite a fashion. So I think those are the only two things it really misses in the sort of 5 years since I wrote it. So that would only be 2 more pages, so it's really not worth another edition.
I think it's also worth pointing out, while we're on the subject, that you can buy it in electronic formats too. And those are really useful for carrying on trips because you can actually use it, on an iPad or on a laptop while you're away, or even the phone. And the
iBook version actually has got, I think, like 60 videos embedded in it as well of me just kind of putting into other words the messages that are on the page. Yeah. And it's got extra pictures of, you get to see a much bigger me in the video. You got more value for money.
More Alex. So thanks very much, Alex. I'll sign off now. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, which is Critters at Lembe Resort. Please feel free to add comments below this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you have any suggestions for future topics, we'd be very happy to try and do them in future episodes.